sign at least audio before we get going.
Okay, we are good to go, Chair.
Very good, thank you. And I can't see who is that who was just speaking.
That is Andrea. There she is.
Oh, I'm with CPD,
Andrea.
so
there we go.
I'm your background technical support if you guys need it tonight.
Very good, thank you. People change who the players are on me, and I just gotta know. All right, thank you very much. The meeting will come to order. I'm Chair Tim O'Connell. In accordance with the Governor's proclamations about Safe Start, we're doing this by video conferencing using the Zoom technology. It is being broadcast and is available later on the YouTube channel. With us this evening is Public Works Director Jason Kittner, as well as a number of representatives from the various groups that will be presenting to us this evening. I'd like to start by, for the record, taking roll. So can we have Vice Chair DeBoer present?
Present.
And Member Majeski?
Present.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Member Marshall?
Present.
And Member Milton?
Present.
And Member Portnoy?
Present.
Very good. And Will, you're going to need to speak up because we don't have a video and it's very faint. Okay. So just for future reference.
Yeah, I'll try and fix that.
And then Member Thomas.
Present.
Great, thank you. Everyone's all present. Again, because we do have a couple of interesting presentations later in the broadcast, do try to use the hands feature, or otherwise just kind of wave to me and give me a high sign before you start going in. We want to make sure that everybody has a fair chance to participate, and I will try to ensure that people are given the floor in order so that everyone has a chance to ask questions. First item of business is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting of October 14. They were attached to the packet as a link, so I hope everyone's had a chance to look at those. Assuming so, can I get a motion from one of the members to approve the minutes of the October 14th
I'll move it.
meeting?
Brian.
I saw Mr. Brian make a motion. Is there a second?
George will second.
Great, very good. Thank you, Member Marshall. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none. I think by this we can just do by acclamation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. And let the minutes reflect that the motion passed unanimously. Next item of business is an update on the SCADA project. There was a memo from the Public Works Director circulated earlier, but seems to us, Jason, that we have been talking about the SCADA project for about 3 years. So it's something that we're very anxious to hear how it's progressing. So we'll turn the floor over to you for that presentation and discussion.
Thank you. Good evening. Jason Kittner, Public Works Director with you this evening. And why I just do a quick introduction, our Brown and Caldwell team, Caitlin and Samantha, if you guys go ahead and turn your screen on. And I believe Samantha is going to actually share the screen, or Caitlin's going to share the screen. So you can go ahead and start getting your presentation up while I do a quick introduction. So Chair, you were absolutely correct. We've been talking about this project for 3 years now. And this is an exciting night for us because we are moving closer to the finish line, which is excellent news. As you may remember at the last utility board meeting, I briefly talked about how just because of the differences between the two utilities, we were going to split the utility work up, and we were going to start with the water side first. And so this evening, the Brown and Caldwell team will walk us through the SCADA background and where we're heading, but we're moving into the construction phase on the water side. So with that, Samantha, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. You can introduce your team, and then we'll open up for questions and discussion at the end. And there's myself and Ellen Hunter from the city staff are on this call this evening as well to help with that. So Samantha, it's all yours.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. Thanks everyone for inviting us here today. We know that this is a really exciting project and important project for the city of Mercer Island, and we're excited to be here virtually to give everyone an update on how our SCADA equipment replacement project is going. I am the project manager for Brown and Caldwell on this project, and with me today is Caitlin Bleasner, who is our technical lead and has been working on this project for about 3 years for the city of Mercer Island. And today we just want to go ahead and, Caitlin, do you want to go to the next slide real quick? We will cover just a project background and overview of what we're doing for the water distribution sites. It's a brief review of the design that's going on, and then an update on sort of the sewer sites. And then we can go ahead and open up to questions and comments. Caitlin, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Sam. I wanted to start by providing an overview of the city's remote water and sewer sites that tie into the city's SCADA system. So the sewer collection system has 18 pump stations around the island that pump to King County for treatment. And on the water distribution side, there are 5 sites that are currently monitored by SCADA. This includes the main reservoir pump station site, the First Hill pump station, a metering site, SPU Station 171, and 2 remote pressure stations. The SCADA system is a really critical component to utility operations and providing reliable services to the city's residents and customers. The SCADA system is the supervisory control and data acquisition system that collects data from the water and sewer sites and provides local monitoring and control of the process. Because these sites are unmanned, the city relies on the SCADA system for insight into water and sewer operations, and most importantly, for critical alarm notification. Because of this criticality, SCADA system uptime and reliability becomes really important, and accessibility and usability of the system to the operators, as well as security. Just to provide some background and drivers for this project, we have been talking about this for about 3 years. This project began in 2017, really when the city learned that some of their critical components of the SCADA system were obsolete, no longer available by manufacturers. And on closer evaluation, the city found they were having frequent alarms. The SCADA system itself was made up of a mix of components, and there was no clear standard. The operators were experiencing reliability and usability issues. And so as a result of this, the city went through a master planning process to thoroughly evaluate the system and establish goals and vision for the future SCADA, and define a long-term plan for maintenance and operation of the system. And so the master plan led to the recommendation that the city upgrade the existing SCADA system for water and sewer, which is the SCADA equipment replacement project we're discussing today. So some of the project objectives. The primary objective is to standardize on SCADA technology for both water and sewer. I mentioned the fragmented components in the system. So one of the goals was to standardize on one technology platform for both water and sewer. And so to achieve this, the water and sewer systems will be migrated to a common software platform, as well as common hardware, which will help reduce maintenance and service and training for the city. So another objective is to reduce risk. The aging components in the system are at risk of failure, so the upgrade's really going to help reduce this risk. Operator benefits are also key to this project, so the project will provide operators tools they need to operate the system more efficiently. And as we've gone through development of the SCADA system screens, and the screens that the operators interface with or will interface with on a day-to-day basis. Alan and the operators have been really involved throughout the development process, giving feedback and making sure that the end product really meets their needs. And last, in selecting a new SCADA system, the city selected a SCADA system platform that can integrate with other city business applications in the future, which will enable the city to achieve smart utility benefits in the future. So looking at the overall timeline, the master plan was completed in 2018, and the SCADA replacement project has been in design and programming development since 2019. Due to the ventilation study at the sewer sites, the water and sewer SCADA upgrades have been split so that the water site design and construction can proceed. So we're wrapping up the water site design right now and anticipating a bid award in January 2021 with the construction timeline for next summer. And then the timeline for the sewer site upgrade, it's still kind of dependent on the outcome of the ventilation study. But right now we're thinking that would happen, the bid award would be sometime in mid-2022 with construction in 22 to 23.
Caitlin, would you mind a question?
Sure.
When you say the ventilation study dictates splitting up the water and sewer, could you elaborate on that a little, please?
Yeah, so one of the findings early on as we looked into the sewer sites and performed some site visits early on, we asked about area classifications for the site. So the wastewater sites have potential for combustible gas in the atmosphere. So you need sufficient ventilation in the space to declassify it by the National Fire Protection standards. And so a different consultant has been performing this ventilation study to confirm that the space in the sewer sites is sufficiently ventilated. And how it impacts our SCADA project is the equipment. We want to make sure the equipment we're putting in meets the needs of the space. So ideally it's not a classified space and we can proceed with a similar design like we have on the water sites. And if it's not sufficiently ventilated, then there's a couple options there. But in terms of our project, it could mean putting in explosion-proof equipment. Does that help?
I'll add to that a little bit, and that is, so of the 17 pump stations, they are all different. And so basically the ventilation study has to be completed for each one of those pump stations. The impacts of that ventilation study are going to determine whether or not we have suitable space and as Caitlin, specification necessary to accommodate that equipment. Until that ventilation study is completed, we don't know the answer to that yet. For example, do we have to modify the sewer pump station? And if it's a significant modification that takes place at that pump station, in combination with, the age of the pump station, the age of the equipment, some of the other components in that pump station, the city will have to make a determination on whether or not, rebuilding that pump station in part or in whole is something we have to take into consideration as part of this project or separately. So it's a fact-finding piece that is necessary for SCADA, but it's also a necessary evaluation that's take place in the sort of the long-term health of the sewer utility as well.
And what's the time frame to complete that process, Jason?
I believe they're finishing, and I'm going to look to you, I believe they're finishing that work. They should have a draft to us by the end of this year, if I'm not mistaken. So we should be to the results early next year.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just ask a follow-up question to that. Is the if the result of the study is that there is not sufficient ventilation to eliminate the explosion risk? Is the idea to improve it so that it is, or is it to put in explosive-proof sensors?
Ideally, we would modify it so that we don't have to put in explosion-proof sensors, but we'll have to, we don't know what we don't know right now. So the easy answer is to say we have to evaluate both and all the options on the table. We want to do what's cost-effective, reliable, and what's in the best interest of the city and the utility in the long run. So
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate on what that means at this point in time until we have the results of the ventilation study. There's also some other components to it, as we've talked about. As you know, these 17 pump stations are in pretty unique locations around the island, and they have some challenges associated with them. So, you know, the easement language at each of these pump stations has to be taken into consideration in terms of what modifications can and can't be made at them as well. So it's a little bit of a hornet's nest, to be perfectly honest. It's not just an easy puzzle to solve. There's different pieces to it, and I can tell you that Samantha and Caitlin probably spent 4 or 5 hours walking me through the different bubbles on a whiteboard to show how everything was connected. She's laughing because she remembers that meeting very well. Yeah, it's a interesting scenario that we're working through, and the ventilation study is the first piece of information we need to make some decisions.
Yeah, I had asked the question, Jason, only because I didn't remember us previously discussing the risk of exploding accumulations of sewer gas around the island. So, you know, it's something people get concerned about. So I'm pleased to hear that we're taking a look at that.
Absolutely. Questions?
Any other questions? I know I interrupted, and I do apologize, Caitlin. Any other questions from any other member of the board before we allow Caitlin to
Yeah,
forward?
I have one, and Caitlin, I know you're not done yet, but you mentioned one word I want to have you expand on, and that is security. And SCADA is great right up until the second it gets hacked. So what has been done to audit either the security gateway or the firewall to basically make sure it's not going to get hacked?
Yeah, so during the master planning process, that was evaluated from a high level, and mainly through discussions with city IT, because city IT is really handling all of that kind of network infrastructure to support the SCADA project. And so I can't speak to specifics on, you know, firewalls used, but that, you know, that has been at the forefront of our discussions throughout this process. And that, you know, it was decided that ultimately that would fall under, you know, city IT to manage.
For security.
Yeah, the city is just as vulnerable itself too. So
Yeah, it's a good question. Caitlin's absolutely right. Our IT department has been hands-on and intimately involved in this process. Cybersecurity, security of the system has been at the forefront of our minds since day one. Since we went through the master plan process, our IT team has been part of this process, and they continue to be part of the process. And it is a concern that we continue to address on a daily basis. So, good question.
And there is existing SCADA systems already in place that are older and less capable of being updated for security. So migrating to the new platforms actually enables better security in general.
Exactly. All right, should I continue?
Please do, and thank you for allowing us to interrupt and ask questions. So, but please do continue.
Of course, yeah. All right, so next we wanted to talk about cost. So here's the engineering cost estimate for just the water site SCADA construction. It's coming in at $329 to $465K. And so this doesn't include, you know, design cost or programming cost, which is being provided by Brown and Caldwell. And it also doesn't include the sewer site construction or the communication upgrade and kind of the network infrastructure that I was talking about that city IT is handling to support the project. All right, so next we'll get into a review of more detail of the design for the water sites. The project scope of work, this really lists the contractor scope of work for the water site project. So we'll be replacing the PLC control panels at 5 water distribution sites, and the contractor will be providing the Siemens hardware that the city standardized on. And we'll also be performing field testing and commissioning, some electrical work and training. And as I just mentioned, the programming is being provided by Brown and Caldwell. The design package structure consists of drawings and specifications. The specifications contain general contractor requirements and the technical requirements. And then the drawing type, some of which we'll look at on the next couple of slides, mainly the control panel layouts. But the package also includes power distribution drawings, input-output card drawings, network block diagrams, and demolition details. So now we're going to step through the scope and specific upgrades happening at each of the remote sites and kind of touch on some unique features at each site. First Hill Pump Station. The existing enclosure box at this site will be reused, and the inside of the panel will be demoed, and a new back panel that has all of the SCADA components will be installed by the contractor. This slide shows the new control panel layout at First Hill Pump Station. The existing enclosure is on the left and the new back panel is on the right. So some of the key features of the panel: a local graphical display will be installed so the operator can walk up and look at the status of the site and make control changes. I actually included here, this is an actual screenshot of the working graphics that our programmer has been developing. And here's the programmable logic controller, or PLC. This is the process controller or brain that monitors and controls the site locally. And so the PLC and the local display here, these will be the Siemens hardware components that the city has standardized on. The panel will also have backup power, space for future growth, and other panel hardware components will be standardized across all water sites. SPU Station 171 is a metering site. The existing panel is an outdoor roadside cabinet. So similar to First Hill, the existing enclosure box will be reused and the inside of the panel will be gutted, and a new back panel will be installed by the contractor. At this site, there's also an existing panel board, which will be replaced as part of the project. This slide again shows the new control panel layout, this time for SPU 171. There's an existing PSC meter on the roadside cabinet, and here's a location of the new power panel board. We're moving it outside of the enclosure. A new back panel shown here in the middle. And this site will also have a local display, but since this is outdoors, the contractor will be installing a swing out panel inside the enclosure. So then when you first open the door, you'll see the graphical display for viewing and operating the system. And this will provide, a barrier between, the operator and the control panel components.
Caitlin, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I don't see a backup battery on this one, and it's PSC providing. What's the backup power on this one?
This the UPS at this one, so some of the features that were consistent across sites, I didn't point out. I should have said that. So this all the sites have a backup battery.
Okay.
And that this one is actually shown down here. It's a 120 volt UPS. This site's kind of unique. It doesn't have a backup generator like some of the sites. All right, so at South Fire Station, the next two sites will run through our north and south fire stations. These sites currently only monitor water system pressure, and we've left space in the design for the city to add water quality monitoring here as well in the future. The plan at this site is to demo the existing control panel and then install a new control panel enclosure in this existing location. This is due to space limitations in the existing enclosure that we need to replace it at this site. It's a pretty small panel layout because of its simplicity. We're not providing a local display at this site. The pressure transmitter is pretty close to the panel here, so the operators can just read pressure off of the transmitter itself there. At North Fire Station, this is the other pressure monitoring site. It's a little unique in that the existing control panel location doesn't meet electrical code requirements for working clearance. So because of this, the PLC panel is being relocated to a new location to bring it up to code. The existing panel is going to be repurposed as a terminal junction box. So all of the existing wiring lands here, and then the contractor will install new conduit wiring between this location and the new panel location, which is shown here on the right. And the control panel layout is identical to what we showed at South Fire Station. All right, the last site is the Reservoir Pump Station. This is the city's largest site in terms of equipment that's monitored by the SCADA system. So here, the existing enclosure isn't large enough, so we're installing a new enclosure at this site. And similar to North Fire Station, the existing enclosure will be repurposed as a terminal junction box. You can see it's pretty tight in here. There's a lot of wires going on down at the bottom. So some of the panel features, there'll be a local graphical display at this site. There's some hardwired selector switches that we're maintaining that were on the existing panel. Those are for valve control. This is a nice new, it'll be a nice new double door enclosure, plenty of room. The one thing I wanted to mention with the new booster chlorination station project that will be adding additional equipment to this site, we've designed the panel large enough to accommodate all of that future equipment. So our project will be going in first, and then the booster chlorination station project will be after. So there are variable frequency drives at the reservoir that control the booster pumps at the reservoir site. Another thing that our project will be doing is upgrading these from hardwired to network communication between the existing VFDs and the new control panel. So this will allow for pump control and transfer of additional monitoring all over a single cable. And these are Siemens VFDs, and the PLC is a Siemens PLC, so they'll talk very well together. Here's a quick plan drawing of, or partial plan drawing of the reservoir pump station. So here you see the location of the existing control panel. Here's the location for the new panel. And then these are those VFDs along the wall here that will tie into the new PLC panel. So those are all of the sites. Next, we wanted to talk a bit about construction sequencing and constraints, since it'll be really important that this project, the upgrade, goes smoothly. So in our specifications, we've placed requirements on the contractor and kind of summarize them here. In terms of the sequence of construction, we're We're going from the smallest and the least critical sites to the largest and the most critical in terms of construction sequence. We've identified any work period restrictions. For example, at the reservoir site, we've provided a must complete by date so as to not impact the chlorine booster project. We've also provided input-output quantities per site. This is kind of to show just the relative size of the sites to the contractor. And we've also identified control system downtime restrictions and then any other construction constraints. So through discussions with the city and the operators, we've indicated 2 sites that must remain operational during this control system cutover. So the operators will be operating the First Hill Pump Station and the Reservoir Pump Station sites manually during the SCADA project cutover. All right, so next I wanted to provide an update on the SCADA replacement at the sewer sites. Talked a little bit about this already. So just to reiterate, the ventilation study impacts SCADA because we want to ensure the control panels are adequately rated for the environment they're installed in. And the outcome of the study will help inform how our project proceeds. And right now the time frame we're looking at again is bid in mid-2022 and construction 2022 to 2023. So some of our next steps, we need to finalize the water bid documents, and we have a tentative date for City Council meeting December 1st for authorization to bid, and we're anticipating the water site bid award in January 2021, construction next summer, and then the sewer site design would begin in mid-2021 once we know more about the ventilation study results. All right, so that was a lot of information. So now I'd like to open it up to the board for questions and any feedback you have.
Caitlin, if you could just go ahead and stop sharing your screen so we can see everyone's faces and answer questions. Perfect, thank you.
I have a question.
Please,
Can you hear
go
me?
ahead. Yes, George, go ahead.
When I was at Puget, we had a couple of the SCADA upgrade projects, and granted that the electric system is more complicated than the water and the sewer, but it seemed like a lot of the troubleshooting actually happened after go live, when mainly software bugs were discovered, and the contractor had to work with PSE to fix those things. So I'm kind of curious here, is there a window of time allowed for testing this? I'm seeing the construction schedule, but I'm looking, what I'm wondering is, okay, after all of these construction work is completed, how much time is allowed for testing, and who is really responsible for, making sure that there aren't any bugs? I know there always will be, but getting the bugs out of the software system. I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's a really good question. So a couple of things that we have planned to help, prevent that. I think there will always be, something that comes up, but with the control panel design, we have a factory acceptance testing step where the control panel manufacturer, the integrator who's building the panels, will fully test that the back panels that we're talking about putting in at the sites, and the programmer will be there on site with the integrator, and they'll fully test together. So the programmer will load the program into the PLC at that time, and that's supposed to be the first step in debugging the system and making sure that there's nothing wrong there. That's the first.
And to add to that, Caitlin, sorry, we're actually doing two factory acceptance tests. So we will do the factory acceptance test on site with the integrator at their shop. And then when we actually go into the commissioning and startup, we will be doing, our programmer will be on site again to making sure that when we implement it at the site versus at the panel shop, that there is that second layer of testing to debug any of the challenges with the programs.
Yeah. So in terms of the on-site testing, you know, there's the physical cutover. All the wires need to be, you know, everything needs to be first tested at the site. You know, pulling the wires back, relabeling wires, everything set up before the cutover, so the physical cutover can happen really quickly. And then they'll go through additional testing steps. There's functional testing where they'll test the control strategy, and that's all included in that cutover time, and where we're still anticipating the operators to need to manually operate the system. And then beyond that, we still anticipate that the programmer will be on site for a couple days, you know, making additional tweaks and adjustments, tuning, and, you know, beyond that, we still have other operational testing and commissioning where, you know, the city will be operating the system, but if anything happens, you know, the programmer's on call to help, you know, debug the system.
Is the programmer B and C a programmer? Did I read that right in the slide? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Are you going to have a
Board members, I would encourage you to use the raise your hand so that we're all not talking over one another. Encourage you to use the raise your hand function on the Zoom. And I see Steve has done so. So Steve, I'll recognize Mr. Milton. I'll recognize you. You got a question?
Yeah, I just had a question on the estimate. When you went by that slide earlier, you mentioned that the programming is not included, but that is an element that's done by the Brown and Caldwell team. Is there currently an estimate for that, or is that just like a billable time thing that's done at the end, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, we currently, with a lot of the programming, we're doing it ahead. So we're developing the graphics, we're developing that PLC programming now. For specifically the water sites, it's looking right around $200,000 for the water site development, and that will include time for the commissioning and the startup for a programmer to be on site to do that work.
Okay, and that's in addition to the 329 to 465 range for this piece of this project. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Great. Brian Thomas, you were next.
I just was hoping either somebody from the engineering team or from Jason could talk about, if we're going out for competitive bid on both of these, I imagine there's not, you know, hundreds of entities that are likely to bid for this. Do you have a sense of how competitive, or how many firms are interested in doing this work for the city? And if so, you know, sort of what the competitive landscape might be, so we get the best price for the city?
So I think I'll take the first crack, and then Sam, if you want to add in. So we've talked about bidding quite a bit. Actually, there's actually some RCW that, you know, some language that may or may not be applicable to this project. After the recommendation of the city attorney, we are going to go out publicly and bid this project, but we are going to make sure that the requirements set forth in the bid package are very specific, and that the low bidder is actually responsive and can actually perform the work. Because at the end of the day, this is really, really important work that we have to make sure we get done right the first time. And so we've been in constant conversation with our city attorney's office to make sure that we are packaging the bid in that way. As far as how much interest it's going to glean, I've asked that question of B and C. We don't really know, although I think we're hoping for 3 to 5 bidders, responsive bidders. And they're shaking their heads yes. So that would be great if we had that result.
Good. Thank you. Board member Porkney. Will, again, your camera's not on, but if you've got a question, please go right ahead.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I wasn't able to fix my camera. You guys hear me? Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Are you planning on doing a third-party commissioning agent for this, or just be commissioning by the contractor?
It would be commissioning by the contractor. With Brown and Caldwell will be providing services during construction, submittal reviews, and other support. And with us performing the programming as well, the programmer will be part of the commissioning process.
Okay. Okay. And maybe this is a question for the city. Is the contract going to be a GMP, or how's the contract going to work?
It's not going to be a GMP, I believe. It'll be on our standard contract language for a public works project when it's all said and done. That's where we're at right now. Again, we're in constant conversations with our city attorney's office in terms of what that actually looks like at the end of the day, but that's the direction we're heading right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Very good. Are there any other questions for this team on this presentation?
I'll just add two other pieces if there's no other questions at this point in time, and that is Caitlin sort of just quickly talked about the training element. You'll recall that when I took over 5 years ago, training staff was a really important end result for us. That's a big recommendation that came out of the Boil Water Advisory, and so we have made sure that we have worked in staff training into this process. Our team has been intimately involved with Brown and Caldwell along the way. You talk about the operators, and they are working with the operators to configure the platform to look and feel and function the way that we need it to satisfy the city operations. And so I think that's a step in the right direction, and I'm excited to see Alan and his team continue to implement this system, because I can tell you our operator knowledge maybe 5-6 years ago wasn't where it is today, and it's a good thing. It's a step in the right direction. The last piece I'll say is we are applying for FEMA grants. There's actually FEMA grants out there, and our SCADA project is one that was we put through the initial preliminary review, and it's moving on to actual formal recommendation and grant application. Fingers crossed on whether that actually gets funded, but given the price point with this project and the importance with it, we're giving it a shot. And so we're actually putting the final touches on that FEMA grant application this week, and that'll go off next week. So we'll keep you apprised what we hear back, but let's hope it turns out favorably for us, which would fund up to potentially 75% of the total cost. It's a big number.
That would be marvelous. Anything else on this topic? I see no other questions from the board. And Jason, thank you. Caitlin, Samantha, thank you very much. Very informative, and it's good to see this long road not be over, but at least the next bend is in sight.
And I will
very much.
See this team again when we bring back the sewer stuff.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, moving on to the next item in our agenda is an update on the situation with Criticality. So I would go ahead and ask that we turn it over. Jason, do you want to introduce whoever's going to be starting this presentation? I think we'd appreciate that.
Sure. So our Criticality team, why don't you go ahead and pop up on the screen? So there's a number of members here tonight, and I'll pass it to Kevin here in a second. I see he's on the screen now to introduce his team. But yes, we are a year plus now into our implementation cycle, and so it's a good opportunity to check in with the Criticality team, see how the last year went, talk about things on the horizon, and just give you an opportunity to have some questions and dialogue with the Criticality team, because they're an important partner of ours, an important service delivery. So with that, Kevin, I'll let you introduce your team and then go ahead and take the floor.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jason. And good evening, members of the utility board. It's nice to see at least some of you again. You'll recall we were in front of the board about a year ago this time, obviously under very different circumstances. But we thought it would be a good idea in talking with Jason to provide a little bit of an update just in terms of how things have been going with the contract, see if you all had any questions for us. And I think what we'll cover tonight is just a few different areas. The first is we'll do a year in review. That'll encompass operations. We'll talk about our outreach efforts, what's been going on there, and we'll also do a review of what's headed your and other customers' way on January 1st with a rate increase. So as Jason did mention, joined tonight by a very great team. Elizabeth Zorad is our Waste Zero manager. She was one of the leaders of the implementation for us. Steve Brum is our regional controller, so he'll be the one discussing rates. And then in the background, and I think just listening, we have Aaron Gagnon and Quinn Apuzzo, who help out on some of our external facing issues. Lizzie's going to control the screen or the slide, so I'm going to gently nudge her somehow, and she'll move it along. But if there are questions along the way, I'm happy to answer them. So it's the chair's pleasure in terms of how you want to handle that, but I'm certainly open to that, or happy to wait until the end. Okay, so quick reminder, recap, Recology, your solid waste recycling collection hauler now for just over a year. Reminder that the company is 100% employee owned and focused primarily on resource recovery. So not, kind of the traditional landfill. We invest our capital and our resources into facilities, equipment that recover resources and put them back into their best and highest use. So on Mercer Island, we provide service to approximately 6,400 residential customers, about 500 commercial and multifamily customers. For all of our recycling, which is all the residential customers and many of the commercial customers, we take the materials to a facility in South Seattle where it's sorted, processed, manufactured into bales and sent off to end markets. We also provide public education and outreach, although that has changed fairly dramatically since the pandemic, and Lizzie will talk about that. And then another component that we had was a retail store and drop-off for recycling, which customers enjoyed for about the first 6 months of the contract. So operationally, you can see here a little bit of a breakdown in terms of how the material has been handled over the past year. We took in about just shy of 20,000 tons of material. Just over 60% of that was sent to that better and higher use, 20% by way of recycling, 41% to an organics facility where it was composted and turned into soil amendment, and then just under 40% was sent to the Cedar Hills Regional Landfill. These are kind of the big headline numbers, but obviously one of the things we look at is how much is going to landfill versus how much is being diverted from the landfill. And to see a 60% is very good. I think especially first year with a new contractor and a new system, to have that kind of diversion rate is a credit to the sustainability mindset that I think a lot of residents on Mercer Island have. Additionally, last year, several Mercer Island residents did take advantage of the Recology store in Issaquah. We had close to 500 visitors just to drop off hard to recycle items. And they dropped off over 5,000 gallons of styrofoam, 300 fluorescent bulbs, and 200 electronic items. So just another way for them to find channels to better handle materials and put them to their best and highest use. So operations, this is sort of our bread and butter. Did our trucks go out and collect your cart? And what you can see here is the full first year of service. And what we have as a benchmark is a target of 1 miss per 1,000 collections. And that's right about where we started the contract, just under that at 0.9 misses per 1,000. And as our drivers and crews got more comfortable, started to understand maybe where some hidden backyard customers were or things like that, it dropped and has stayed low over the course of the year, which we're happy to see. And so it's nice to see that's stabilized. The Mercer Island community does benefit from some of our company's more senior drivers, and they do a really great job, and they take seriously their customer service responsibility that they have on Mercer Island, and in a very difficult collection environment in some places too. So. Obviously, we all got a little curveball over the course of the year, and we've had to adjust. We've had a interesting response to how we've had to handle this COVID-19 pandemic. So whereas many lines of business, including healthcare facilities, shut down in the spring, we never stopped. We always kept providing service, and that has actually meant that our world has changed a little bit as folks have shifted from offices to homes. We have seen an uptick in the amount of recycling we get in customers' carts. For a while there, people were maybe bored and really did quite a bit of yard work. And so it kind of shifted things, and at the same time the businesses were lower. Luckily on Mercer Island we have trucks that are versatile and can operate both residentially and commercially, so that has been not too much of an impact for us there. We have asked all of our drivers to operate differently in the morning so that they can prevent the spread of the disease. So we used to have morning safety meetings where we would launch everybody and get them going for the day. Now we ask that our drivers go directly to their trucks. We've given them a badge that they can wear, encouraging customers to stay 6 feet apart, even if they are wearing a mask, like the dinosaur in the picture there. Masks take many shapes and forms, but we've got a really nice response, and our drivers love to see the types of notes like the one that's posted up there from a young boy on Mercer Island. It's nice to see the community support for our team who's out there working so hard and has never stopped. So we've been able to keep going and keep moving, and we're doing our best to shift how we do our day-to-day operations so that we can keep our drivers healthy and out there working. This is just another kind of operational metric that we look at and review. This is inbound calls and emails, sort of an indicator, I think, of how things are going, or a canary in the coal mine, if you will. And early on in the contract, we were getting a lot of calls. It was comparable to like an inclement weather situation where we're not providing service. There was just a lot of calls about how do I set up billing. I want a different cart, I want a different service level, whatever the case may have been. There was a lot. And again, just like with the misses, the calls started to die off and have just kind of tapered to a level that we see on a steady basis from month to month. One thing I will note too is that early on in the pandemic, we shifted all of our call center to a remote situation where they still are today. That did create a couple of headaches and challenges for us along the way because it was something we hadn't contemplated or prepared for. So we did this on the fly, but we had all of our customer service agents set up and ready to go, and they are still handling all customer calls from their homes. So just another metric of the call center and their performance and how quickly they answer the call and how long they're on that call for. So generally speaking, the call lately it's been about 45 seconds, and that's been in part because of just some technology challenges that we have faced in regard to our CSRs being at their home, whether it's the internet goes out or some other issue. And they're spending about 3.5-4 minutes every time a customer calls in, and that's been actually fairly consistent over the course of the first year. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth, who is she's our Waste Zero manager, and what that means, it's basically she's responsible for all of our outreach and making sure that customers are putting their materials where they're supposed to go. So, Elizabeth, over to you, and you can share what we have been up to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. So it is my joy to share what we've been doing and what we've been up to for this entire year. So early on in 2020, we were able to do in-person education. So that can consist anywhere from a presentation. We can go into a commercial space and provide technical assistance. So helping a business implement best management practices and how to divert as much material as possible from the landfill. So we had lots of fun getting to know the Mercer Island community for a few months into our new contract. And of course, COVID-19 has changed outreach, as Kevin mentioned earlier. Our outreach team has been working really hard to modify all of our outreach to a virtual platform. So now we can conduct virtual presentations, we can do virtual workshops, we can provide virtual technical assistance through video. So working with property managers and business owners and still helping them implement those best management practices to divert material. We have had a lot of fun creating educational videos for properties. Using a QR code, which is what you can see on the screen to the right, or just a link as well. And we have started more social media campaigns trying to remind individuals what can and cannot go into recycling containers. America Recycles Day is coming up next week. So if you follow us on social media, you will see some more activity around that as well. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Steve Brum to discuss the 2021 rates.
Can I interrupt for just a second? Elizabeth, do you have any kind of a recycling score for the island?
Well, what Kevin showed earlier, the diversion level, that is the score, but Steve Brum is going to talk about some of the components that go into the recycling adjustment component of the rates, where we do an audit of residential recycling. So far, you guys have been doing pretty good, but I'll let Steve talk to that.
Well, hey, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here chatting with you all. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rate adjustment mechanism that's in the contract, and just kind of explain it, since this is our first rate adjustment since the contract was implemented here a little over a year ago. So this is new to us all under this contract. So So there's two components. There's the component related to the CPI, and then there's the recycling component that Elizabeth just mentioned. So the first component, the CPI, is what you're looking at on the screen right now. And I'm not going to read all that. The snip there at the bottom is what came out of the contract, section 5.3. And basically, there's a mechanism as a Bureau of Labor and Statistics. There's an index there. And basically, we take a trailing 12 months, year-over-year comparison as of mid-year and do the calculation. So, we already went over this with Jason previously, but for everyone's benefit here, the prior year figure, the average was 270.644, and then the current year was 275.764, roughly a just shy of 1.9% increase in the CPI. So as part of the contract, this adjustment impacts the collection component of the rates. If you recall from when the contract was implemented and that first rate sheet came out, there's a collection piece of each rate, and then there's a disposal piece. So the collection piece, which is in residential, it's a little more than half. That piece of the rate's going to increase by about 1.9, and then the disposal component will remain unchanged because King County did not implement a rate change year over year. So even though it says roughly 1.9 there, how it translates onto the rate is actually less because there's no rate increase this year. So that's that piece. The second piece is there's an Exhibit E. It kind of goes into it in detail. This is one portion of it. When the contract started, we developed basically a baseline of the value of the recyclables collected in the city. And basically there was an assumption made on with regards to the mix of the different types of commodities and what the commodity values were for each one of those commodities. And then you fast forward into this year, we've done two, Elizabeth's team and some others on our team basically isolated some loads from the city, and on two occasions basically picked through the loads. And I think roughly about 1,000 pounds each time. And basically it said, okay, now that we've been collecting, here's a sample from the city. Here's what's really getting picked out of the mix, if you will, in terms of the different types of commodity, the glass, the cardboard, et cetera. So we did that in May, and then we did that again. It says November. We actually did it already, I think a little over a month ago. And then basically we rolled that up. And what it says in Exhibit E is that difference, if it improves, meaning it's a better recycling scenario for the city, the customer's rates will be impacted to the positive. Now, if it went the other way, then the customer's rates would be increased. Keeping in mind this piece is just kind of layered onto that 1.9% I just mentioned. In this year, because the recycling situation actually improved, there's going to be for residential at least about a 34-cent reduction in rates. So that's what I'll point out is on average, our baseline when we started the contract was that the material collected at the curb would have a value of $65 a ton, which that was just a baseline number that was set. It was agreed upon, and it's reasonable, for the market. Now, when we fast forwarded into 2020, and we took those two samples and we looked at the rates, the values for each of the recycling commodities, that's gone up to $74.10 per ton. And so per the methodology in Exhibit E, what results is a 34-cent reduction in each residential customer's rate. And so what that means in reality is the customer's rate, so you can see here, so for example, that 32-gallon cart weekly, it says 32.04 is the current rate, and it's going to 32.19. Obviously, that's not 1.89%. That's a lot less. So what happens in the calculation is the 32.04 gets the 1.89% applied to it, and then the 34-cent reduction due to the improvement in recycling is then layered onto that, bringing it down to $32.19. So those customers that have that service level only see a 15-cent increase, when if this recycling mechanism wasn't part of the Mercer Island contract, instead of seeing a 15-cent increase, they'd see a 49 cent increase. So that's how the recycling component works. It was a good year in terms of the product mix in recycling, a decent year in the pricing. We didn't see any drop-offs or anything go haywire. In fact, some commodities have improved. So the city benefits, the city's residents benefit. So, so yeah, that's really in a nutshell how the rates were calculated. We you know, it's a good mechanism that's in the city's contract, and it's nice and spelled out well. And here's the first end result of this process. That's really all I had on the rates, unless, I mean, if you all had any questions or needed me to clarify anything.
Board members, are there any questions at this time, or should we? Yeah, I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And again, we're in this screen view, so I can't see a raised hand. So if
fair enough,
someone will just give us a high sign.
So this is Steve Milton. I had a question on, you mentioned you were talking about the weighted averages based on the 2 sample periods, and that the value that you said went up from, was it 64 to 75 or so, in that range?
Correct.
Roughly, was that
yeah.
the weighted value of the streams went up that much, or was that the kind of the blended average?
It's a blended average. So for example, if you were to look at Exhibit E, you know, we all have time later on. There was an assumption that a certain percentage of the mix would be cardboard and a certain percentage would be glass, etc. And then each of those has a value. Now, when you fast forward into 2020, the percentage of cardboard went up over 5%. So 5% more cardboard was collected than was originally anticipated. Cardboard is one of the more valuable commodities, so that helps.
Sure. The Amazon effect.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
But even besides that, just kind of looking at my notes here. You know, the pricing for cardboard went up. Also, the portion of the product mix went up, and then, you know, things like aluminum, for example. You know, the price went down, but the mix of the product went up. So all these things we kind of factored into that weighted number. So yeah, when I say weighted, it's more of an aggregate number, not really. It's not related to the weight of the material.
Other than the weight as relates to the tonnage value for those different waste streams. Got it.
Right,
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, why don't we let the Recology people finish up, and then we can have some further questions, if any, at the end.
Sounds good. And I think we just have a few more just kind of upcoming, what to be on the lookout for, and Elizabeth will talk through those, and then, yes, happy to answer any questions.
So the holidays are coming around. We know that there is a tree lot on Mercer Island. So we will be helping the tree lot with their communication to residents that they can put their unflocked, undecorated trees at the curb at no additional cost of the city of Mercer Island. So they will be receiving a similar postcard as to the one that you're seeing right now to hand out when residents purchase their trees. We are also working with the city right now and organizing a Where Does It Go workshop for residents, primarily focused on the holiday, so how to reduce your holiday waste, along with the basics of recycling and what goes where. So those are going to be coming up before the end of the year, which we are really excited about. With that, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any further questions.
Well, this is Chair O'Connell. I'll start off. How long after Christmas will the Christmas tree recycling program be operating?
So usually we get an influx of those trees for collection during the first 2 weeks of January. But as long as they're cut under 6 feet, they're unflocked, they're undecorated, we'll pick them up. Last year we had a really great communication about it, and the residents were active in participating in that program. So we are expecting the same.
Great. Will, do you have a question, or did you just not lower your hand from the last time?
I do not have a question. Sorry, I'll take that down.
Please, go right ahead.
I think he said he did not have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't.
Oh, he did not have a question.
No question.
Yeah, sorry, Will. I'm having a real tough time hearing you, so I apologize. Anybody else have any questions for the Recology team?
I don't have a question specifically, but just I guess it looks. I mean, this is actually probably the best news rate discussion we've had so far this year, as far as the lowest amount of differential. This is good job for the city. Good job to everyone involved. So thanks for some good news finally.
Ditto. Echo that. Tom, you have a question?
That's just not a question. I'll just say, you know, I thought the last year went very well. I mean, didn't notice any change from our previous haulers, so well done. Well done on converting over.
Sure. Brian, yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna anecdotally say that we just had a sort of a situation in our neighborhood with Recology, a small thing. I'm not going to get into details, and frankly, the resolution of it and the way that the responsiveness of it was just fantastic. I could not believe the customers, the first person I talked to on the phone versus the callback I got from somebody else following up to make sure I was okay. I mean, not to bash the previous provider, but I'd never received that kind of experience when we had issues with respect to collection in the past. And so I was just jazzed. And had just a fantastic experience. So I think things are going great.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I'll just make one quick comment, and that was, you saw in the presentation from Steve, we did, or Lizzie, one of us, we did move up the collection event, the recycling collection evaluation study up earlier in the year. That was to accommodate the schedule for the rate increase. There's some pretty specific language in terms of timing that we have to get information into the paper of record. And so we moved that up to make sure we accommodate that. So it will be in the reporter next week, I believe, Lizzie, the notification to customers, although it's small, it's still a rate increase, and it's important that we communicate that to our community. But I think overall, we as a city should be pretty happy with the commodity adjustment mechanism that we put into the contract. I mean, year one was a good result for us, and so I think it turned out well for us, given the climate we advertised this process with and the timing of, you know, the recycling market at the time. So I think it's a win for us at this point in time.
Absolutely, and just to add to Jason's thought, you will see an ad in the Mercer Island Reporter next Wednesday about rates. The rates you saw will also be available online to residents. Every year we create a service guide similar to what you received back in October. It's a trifold with where does it go information, including rate information. You'll be receiving that in mid-December before the January 1st rate increase.
Well, thank you. And I think I'm expressing the consensus of the board. Thank you for this presentation, and moreover, thank you for the service that you've provided to the island over the last year. It has been greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, hearing nothing else on that topic, the last item on our agenda is to review the work plan. We are anticipating having a meeting in December. I understood that we might need to be reviewing the date of that because it would conflict with the city council meeting. Jason, you want to just kind of update us? Is that still the case, that we may need to reevaluate that December, whatever it is, December 8th meeting?
Potentially, I need to talk to the city clerk to confirm it. Right now, I'd say let's pencil in our calendar December 8th. We did add the December meeting, so thank you for that. I think we have some really important projects on the horizon, and I think it's important that the board is apprised of them and has an opportunity to weigh in and provide recommendations along the way. So in particular, on the December 8th meeting, we have the booster chlorination station project update. So we'll bring back our consultant team and our engineer to talk about that project and timing, and just make sure we start getting our heads around that big project that's on the horizon. And then we have a new project that we're actually required by law to wrap up by June 30th, and that's the vulnerability assessment that has to take place, an emergency response plan update. So that work is underway now. It's a new project that the board hasn't heard yet at this point in time, but we will quickly bring you up to speed, because there will be a report that comes out probably in early spring next year that I'm sure the board and the council will be very interested in terms of, where our risk and potential liability rests in our water utility, and where we need to focus some of our future capital dollars on terms of stabilizing that infrastructure in the future. So those are the two projects on the horizon to talk about in December. But then looking out to the rest of 2021, there's some pretty big capital projects that we need to continue to talk about. The SCADA project, the ventilation study. It's important that we start previewing those and penciling those out on the calendar. So that's what's in store. I would say hold December 8th for now. I will talk to Deb and confirm that date, and we'll send you an invite. And if we need to find another date, we'll send out like a poll for some options.
Perfect. Yeah, we understand, Jason. I mean, sometimes we've had meetings in December, sometimes we have not. But this year we're kind of behind since we lost most of our meetings in the spring and early summer. And all of those projects that you're discussing are important. I will tell you, I've been on the board for, I think this is my 7th year, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time I heard people talking about accumulations of explosive sewer gas. So I think everybody will be very interested in hearing about the ventilation study on a going forward basis. So
yeah, so I'm just curious.
If there's a need to adjust the date, we've had a pretty good mechanism for how we poll board members to get dates. It does get more complicated in December, but I concur it is important, and we should definitely try to do it.
So I'm curious, is there interest from the board to do a field trip to some of these locations? I know we've offered that to new council members. I think it's pretty intriguing to see where some of this infrastructure, where it's located, and some of the challenges the crews are working through. It provides some good context for you all. If you're interested, I'm happy to arrange that. But just let me know if there's a thumbs up. I can start finding some dates that work for us. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I will say, Jason, when Steve Milton and I first came on the board, which is a good few years ago, we did that with your predecessor, and it was a really worthwhile afternoon, kind of as an orientation to the operation of the utility. So I would be interested in doing it again. I will try to make sure to bring a match if we're going to any of the sewer gas accumulations.
It was interesting, actually, in her presentation, a lot of the different, I recognized some of the control boards from the utility shed, back behind the city offices there, and then also inside the reservoir, all the PLCs there, and or the VFDs and the reservoir stations. Like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that area. That's right. We did that tour.
Right.
What a long time ago.
Right. It was a while ago, but definitely I would encourage people who have not done it to do it if we can come up with a date that makes sense. And frankly, if we can come up with a date, I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. It's great for our staff. I like to get our frontline staff participate in that, because they have a ton of institutional knowledge. You can ask every crazy question you could possibly imagine, and they're happy to answer it. So it's a fun experience for us as well. So I will work on some dates and send those out as well.
Perfect.
Very good. All right, is there any other business for the utility board? If not, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second. Moved and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Bye.
Passes unanimously. Board members, I just ask you please stay on screen until the recording is concluded. And whoever our staff person, I think we're ready to sign off.